Who are the Kennedys? The Kennedy family is one of the most influential families in American politics. In 1884, 35 years after the family's arrival from Ireland, Patrick Joseph Kennedy became the first Kennedy elected to public office, and from there, the family has maintained a constant presence in American politics, especially in the 20th century. But this is not the only thing they're famous for. Multiple scandals and tragedies have surrounded this powerful family, so much so that in 1969, Ted Kennedy, who had by this point lost 4 of his siblings prematurely, wondered if some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys. Let's take a look at some of these tragedies. Rosemary Kennedy, sister to John F. Kennedy and the eldest Kennedy daughter, was thought to have suffered from a lack of oxygen at birth. As she grew up, she failed to hit the same developmental milestones as other children her age. Her family sent her to schools for the intellectually disabled and ensured she had extra time and attention spent on her. As she reached her early 20s, Rosemary began to experience violent mood swings and fits, making her mental illness much harder to hide. Her father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., decided to subject Rosemary to an experimental new procedure called a lobotomy, choosing not to inform his family until after it was completed. The lobotomy was botched, leaving Rosemary with the intellectual capabilities of a 2-year-old and taking away her ability to walk and talk. Rosemary was institutionalized and she spent the rest of her life cared for in private institutions until her death in 2005 at age 86. Joseph Kennedy Jr. was in the U.S. Navy. He completed 25 combat missions and volunteered for top-secret assignments known as Operation Aphrodite and Operation Anvil. On one of these missions, in August 12, 1944, an explosive that was carried in his plane detonated early, destroying Kennedy's plane and killing him and his co-pilot instantly. He was just 29 years old when he died. Kathleen Kennedy had decided to visit her father in Paris with a private plane when a storm broke out, which subjected the plane to severe turbulence. When they emerged from the clouds, the plane was in a deep dive, moments away from impact. Despite attempting to pull up, the strain on the plane proved too much and it disintegrated. All 4 on board were killed instantly. On August 7, 1963, Jacqueline Kennedy, JFK's wife, gave birth to a premature baby boy who was quickly baptized and named Patrick. He lived for 39 hours before dying of infant respiratory distress syndrome despite desperate attempts to save him. The couple had already suffered 1 miscarriage and a stillbirth. U.S. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas in 1963. There are many conspiracies on who shot the president, but we will go through them in another video. On June 19, 1964, U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy survived a plane crash that killed one of his aides as well as the pilot. The plane was on its way to a Democratic state endorsing convention in Springfield. The small plane crashed in an apple orchard near Southampton, Massachusetts. The senator was pulled from the wreckage by passenger and fellow Senator Birch Bayh. Kennedy spent 5 months in a hospital recovering from a broken back, a punctured lung, broken ribs, and internal bleeding. Following the crash, Bobby Kennedy remarked to Ed Guthman, "Somebody up there doesn't like us." Another prominent member of the Democratic Party, Robert Francis Kennedy, served as U.S. Attorney General between 1961 and 1964 and was subsequently a senator for New York. By 1968, Robert Kennedy was a leading candidate for the Democratic presidential nominee, following in the footsteps of his brother John. On June 5, 1968, Robert Kennedy was shot to death in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles on the night of his victory in the California Democratic presidential primary. Late one evening in July 1969, Senator Ted Kennedy left a party on Chappaquiddick Island to drop another party guest, Mary Jo, back at the ferry landing. The car skidded off the bridge into the water. Kennedy escaped the car, swimming free and leaving the scene. He only reported the crash to the police at 10 a.m. the next morning, by which point Mary Jo's body had already been recovered from the sunken car. Kennedy was found guilty of leaving the scene of an accident, and he received a 2-month suspended jail sentence, and he had his driver's license suspended for 16 months. He later went on national TV to explain the tragedy, saying, "All kinds of scrambled thoughts went through my head, including such questions as whether some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys." In 1973, the son of Ted Kennedy, Ted Kennedy Jr., lost his leg to bone cancer. The fourth son of Robert Kennedy, David, nearly drowned as a boy but was saved by his father. He was just 12 years old when he saw his father assassinated on live TV. Following a car accident, David began to abuse painkillers, which would inevitably lead to his death in 1984. In 1999, Ted Kennedy was forced to testify about a bar-hopping weekend that led to secondary charges against his nephew William Kennedy Smith. Smith was accused of raping a woman that he and the senator met at a trendy nightclub, but eventually was acquitted of all charges. December 31, 1997, another son of Robert Kennedy died. Michael Lemoyne Kennedy died in a skiing accident after crashing into a tree in Aspen, Colorado. The father of 3 was just 39 years old. In 1999, John Jr., JFK's son, flew from New Jersey to Massachusetts to attend a family wedding with his wife, Carolyn, and her sister-in-law. The plane was reported missing shortly after it failed to arrive on schedule and stopped responding to communications. Wreckage and debris were later found in the Atlantic Ocean, and their bodies were sadly discovered several days later on the seabed. The crash was blamed on John Jr., who was piloting the plane at night and became disoriented before crashing into the Atlantic. April 2, 2020, Maeve Kennedy McKean disappeared with her 8-year-old son Gideon during a short canoe trip in the Chesapeake Bay. Maeve's body was found by divers 4 days later, and Gideon's body was found 2 days after hers on April 8. Authorities believe Maeve paddled to retrieve her son's ball, leading the wind and current to overturn the canoe.